There you go.
Today is September 30th, 2013. It's a Monday. My name is Linda Conley, and I'm speaking with Carol Tedstone, Carol Walsh, and Doris Kumlin, and we're here on Chamberlain Street at Carol's house, Carol Tedstone. This is an interview for the Oral History Project, which is funded by the Community Preservation Committee, and it's run by the Historical Commission here in Hopkinton, Mass. And we hope that this information, just chatting about Hopkinton in the past, will be used as a resource for the town, and it'll provide insight for young people or for people in the future who don't know what Hopkinton used to be like, particularly because it's changing so rapidly now. So that's my piece.
That's a perfect
and you
piece.
you ladies can feel free to talk about whatever you would like.
Yes.
Dr. Place.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Right, and I was going to start saying, first of all, when I went to school, it was less than 4,000 people in this town.
I was going to ask your population.
Right, so I mean that's how small it was, and you felt like you knew everyone.
Right.
Absolutely everyone. You walked down the street, and at least the face was familiar. If not
So for the
familiar.
you have to tell us something about what years you're referring to then when you. Well, so that they'll know.
I think in the 40s even, our town population was 5,000, so between the 30s and 40s or
Right.
something like that.
Well, my recollections probably are much more like after World War II. My father was in the service, and before that I was younger, so those memories are for Dr. Place when we were little and going to school at Center School. We only had two schools in town, Center School and the big old high school, and that was it. And you used to come home for lunch. There was no lunch served at the school, so you came home, and I was on Church Street, so came across the Common.
You grew up on Church Street? Did you
Church
really?
Street.
Okay.
And my mother was a school teacher in Hopkinton, and I substituted in Hopkinton years later. But we'd come home and have lunch quickly, and then maybe as you walk back through the Common, you'd play marbles, dig the hole, you'd have the little marbles, you'd shoot and so forth. And then Amy Phipps, who was the third grade teacher, was also the principal. She'd ring the bell, so if you heard the bell, put the marbles away and run to school. But your classes were, everyone went to that school, everyone in town. For 6 years, in my age bracket, went to that school. And then I went to the town hall in 7th grade. That was an interesting year. And then I went up to the high school. Because that was the grades, I guess. They split your class. Were you there in 7th grade? No.
So you're talking late 40s and early 50s is what was when you were at the
mid-40s.
Mid-40s, okay.
Mid and late 40s.
And how long did you live on? Were you born in Hopkinton?
No, I moved to Hopkinton at 5 months.
Okay,
So I do not
close.
remember too much.
Okay. But
Most of what I knew then was hearsay, so I'm just...
So how long did you live on Church Street?
24 years.
Okay.
And then I moved to Woodville.
And lived happily
ever after. Yes. But we had this Dr. Place who lived on Church Street, almost across from where I lived on. It's now a professional building. As you head up towards St. John's, it's on that side. The professional building after...
John Nash used to own it.
Yes. And that was the doctor's place, and he had a parrot.
And his name again?
Dr. Place. It was P-L-A-Y-C-E, I believe.
And some called them plays and some called them plays,
And he had a parrot, which was a source of interest, but the parrot would swear if it felt like it, apparently, or something. So, sometimes the parents were a little concerned that this parrot is saying naughty things while we're sitting in the room. But he primarily went to people's houses, everyone's house. That's the way it was then. I can remember my sister and I had our ears lanced. It was something
Because
like a
you didn't
crochet
hear
needle or something. That's what it looked like. And I can remember, trying not to cry, trying to be brave, because he probably would yell if you cried. He'd probably say, "Stop that."
You could have said what the parrot said.
Well, I could have. But then my sister, right up on the corner of, where you were talking before, on the corner of Maple Street, there's a building there, and it used to be owned by McDonough's, the McDonough family, and they had a little local store.
Yep.
And my sister one day was doing an errand for the lady that lived downstairs from us, Ruth Danahy. And she had this old baby carriage, great big thing, that she was going to have Lois pick up the groceries in, which she did. And a bunch of kids on the street were with her, I was not. And she went and picked up the groceries and then came back this little chopped up sidewalk up Maple Street and back down Church to our house. Well, at some point, the carriage went over and it ripped 2 fingernails right off her hand. She was screaming. The kids that were with her were screaming. And I was home. I went out of the house to all the screaming. My mother ran up the street. Well, we took her to Dr. Place, naturally, and he did what he could, but one he proceeded to kind of seal back on. One was off, and she was screaming, and that's when the parrot was yelling at her, and so forth. But then the doctor said, "Poor baby," to the parrot, and then the parrot said, "Poor baby."
Is that your neighbor, Carol?
That is Carol, yeah.
But he
Goes up,
went
takes the
to
dog.
houses
Made house call. I remember that. I
very
remember house
often.
calls,
Dr.
too.
Nunziata used to too, for a while.
So was it Dr. Annunziata came after this doctor?
Yes, and there also was a Dr.
Clemens.
Clemens?
Dr. Clemens, and who was the one that
Oh,
lived in
Cece?
Kitty's?
Oh,
Kitty's.
Clemens was
Clemens,
it?
yeah.
Because
there was
when we
one
came to
before
town, I had a broken collarbone.
Mhm.
And in those days, like way back, they put a cast on you. Now they don't
Oh,
even put
boy.
any
No.
Band-Aid or anything on you. So I had a cast. It looked like a little bolero.
Mhm.
And it was in the middle of summer. It was hot, and it was so itchy.
Doris, when was that?
That was in 1948.
Wow. How did
Yeah.
you do that?
I don't know, we were playing in the playground or something, but that's when we lived in New Jersey. It happened, and then we moved here, and I went to Dr. Clemens.
Dr. Clemens.
And it was time for me to get the cast off.
Yeah.
So we had this little electric saw that he just zipped up the back, I think, but,
And do
It
you
was
remember he
horrible.
came to your house to do that?
no, I went
No.
up there because there was this little L on the house.
Yes, and that's when
And,
we walked into the little
Yeah,
office.
and that was his office, and he did it in there. And then I don't know what.
Where was his office? Same office?
No,
High
this
Street.
was the
Corner.
corner of
High
High
Street.
Street,
Okay.
where Bobby Bartlett used to, where he grew up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the little office there, and then who took over the office?
Someone else did. That
Yes, there is another name there. I'm trying to think if
It wasn't Dr. Love and it wasn't Dr.
No,
O'Cecil.
no.
I don't think
no,
that was
they
the
were both
doctor.
doctors.
And I can picture the doctor.
Can
Yeah,
wanna
I
say
can
it's
picture him.
Strata.
I
Oh,
can't
I
get his
didn't know.
name. Maybe if I think of his name, I'll come back and
Yeah.
slow
I
down.
don't want to say it started with a B, but I might be
Yes, I
thinking,
think it started with a B.
Oh,
Oh,
no, I
anyway.
have to go to him.
We'll find it out.
Yeah, but he.
But then Dr. Annunziata came after them.
Oh,
I
did
think.
he?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Right, they were here.
And then he was someone who came to your house. You know, nowadays nobody comes to your house, I guess.
Yeah.
Dr. Love used to come to people's
He
houses.
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, I think he would.
And was he uptown at one point too as a doctor before he moved to Framingham? Up by where the bank is or DP Day?
He might have been. He might have been.
Maybe not, but
I
he
used to
did.
babysit for the Wood family
Oh,
on Church
yes.
Street.
Yeah.
And Susan and Peter, really wonderful kids. But they were kind of running through the house, and they had doors like that, many of them. And you walked through the house, and apparently he had, you know, when he went through, he shut the door, and her wrist went through it.
Oh dear.
So, you know, little kids are wonderful. You put your hand around, you put the rag around, and it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be okay. And Peter, run down and get my mom. I'm gonna call the doctor. And I called Dr. Love, and he was going to be over at Murphy's house, right across the street, to see Mrs. Murphy, and he would be right along. So, okay,
Really?
and so I called Betty, and my mother stayed at the house, and I went down to the hospital with Sue, and then Betty met us there. But
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different than
Yes,
going through
yeah.
an emergency
Yeah.
room.
You
Very
couldn't get in
different.
it today without a written
right,
Yeah,
right,
right,
you'd
right.
stand there bleeding, making out the
Right,
froze.
right.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
a kid even. I mean,
Right.
you can't bring another person's kid in, really.
No, you couldn't do that.
Oh,
No,
I didn't know that.
no,
Oh.
that's very strange.
Yeah.
So the Mrs.
And then-
Murphy was the old Mrs.
It
Murphy,
was
the
Miss-
grandmother.
The
Yes.
grandmother.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he happened to be coming there to
See her.
But I used to babysit with everyone on that street, the Nealans, the first 6 Nealans,
And again,
Not
so
the last
these
two.
are 40s?
when I was 12. Okay.
40s, yeah.
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 Terry's the oldest, so
Terry,
he was
Timmy,
born in
Ann,
43. Yeah.
Pamela, Kathleen, and Lizzie.
Oh my gosh.
Not the 2 younger ones, because I think I was in college by that time.
But
But the first 6 I did, and then the Woods had 4. The Paradises moved to town, and they had 9, but I only took care of maybe 3 of them. But there weren't a whole lot of kids in the neighborhood that babysat. My sister, for some reason, did not. My cousin Jean did not, and Joey and Danny did not, so I had all the babysitting jobs.
Can you
For a
remember?
quarter an hour.
I was just going to say, what you get? A quarter an hour.
They make a lot now.
8 kids a
babysitters.
quarter
Oh,
an
it's
hour.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love babysitting. I think I really did. I liked kids, and I think
Yes.
that's where I chose to be a teacher first, and
Yes.
then a
And a
librarian.
librarian right down the street.
Couldn't wait to get to that library to get my library card, and you had to, be able to write your name and where you lived. What else?
Oh, you
Something
had to
else.
write your name to
You
get
had
your
to write
card?
your name to get your card, and it was Minnie Marshall.
I was going to say Miss Marshall must
Miss
have been.
Marshall, and she had, it was like the typical librarian.
Oh.
She was a sweetheart of a lady, but very, prim and proper, the collar up to here and the little bun at the back of her head, and she talked like this, so you had to talk like that in the library. Of course, it was just the old original
Right,
library building,
right.
so it wasn't all that big. But in the children's room was just as you came inside, right beside the big grandfather clock, just those
Yeah,
corner.
that little area, yeah.
And they weren't picture books, they were reading books. So you had to learn how to read. That's the way it started anyway. And then we got progressive and got picture books. But upstairs was a meeting room. There was no children's room up there. It was just that corner. But she was very sweet, and I was so anxious to get that card. And I went there at least 2 and 3 times a day. Week, every single week. I loved it. I always loved to read, and we still do. So.
Yes.
Anyway, that was a good memory there. And Brown and Smith's was across the street. If anyone gave me a nickel, I went to Brown and Smith's and got an ice cream or candy, or you could get a bag of
So
Brown.
you're talking Main Street.
Yes, right
Yeah.
across the
Library.
where Bill's Pizza is now. That's been
Okay.
Brown and Smith's for ages
Oh,
and
yeah.
ages.
Can
and
you
ages.
describe Brown and Smith for people like me that don't know what it
Do
was
we used
like?
to also call it Hughes's? Where was Hughes's?
Hughes, was that after? Or was
No,
that
I think
on the
it was
same time?
Hughes's.
Yeah. Was it Hughes before it was Brown and Smith?
Well, I know, I don't think so, I don't think. But I don't know.
It was
say-
Tom Brown and Bill Smith. That was
Yes.
Brown and Smith.
Yeah, well, it mustn't have been either the Hughes's.
So next door to Town Hall.
Yeah,
for people
But I
that,
remember people calling, in fact, my husband called it Hughes's.
Yeah.
Did it? So was it afterwards maybe?
I don't think it would have gotten that name. I think Brown, I think Hughes's was,
Maybe
The
it was
name.
originally before
Maybe.
Brown and Smith?
when you were a kid, did you call it Brown and Smith,
Yeah.
do you think?
what kind of a store though? They had a
Ice
soda.
cream, yeah, a little
The
soda
big
ice.
counter, nice
Right,
big counter
right.
people could sit on, and dry goods and so forth.
Papers
but,
and magazines.
Papers, magazines, yeah.
Just one level, and I mean, there was no, it was very small. And the cash register was at the way back, when we walked in, it was back there, and Bill Smith
Right.
was usually
Right.
there.
No bathrooms and things, and
No.
nowadays, whenever you serve food, there's supposed to be a
Yeah.
bathroom.
Jackie worked there, didn't she?
Yes,
Sure.
Yeah,
yes, she
yeah.
did.
Jean
Yeah.
Hayward
Jean
worked there.
Hayward did,
Yeah.
yeah, probably
Her
quite a
mother?
few. Yeah, Mary did, yeah, Mary.
So are you talking maybe still 40s and 50s?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
And Dean Fairbanks went to school with Doris, and he was my first boyfriend because he came up from Grove Street through the church lot there,
Yeah,
that
that back
walk
way.
through to Church Street, and he'd say he was going to Brown and Smith's to get candy. So if I waited on my porch steps, he would bring some candy back, and sure enough, he'd come back, and he'd have like a brown paper bag
Wow.
filled
Penny
for like
It
a
was a penny
nickel.
candy?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Tootsie
and you
Rolls.
get
Yeah.
you get 2 for a penny or something,
Yeah.
and we'd sit there and eat candy.
Oh.
I just said, hey, how could you not like that? Hey,
Well, I
what a
think I
great
would.
boyfriend. It's funny because he was at the reunion and we were talking about that.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you were? Oh.
Yeah.
So he did remember.
Yeah, he kind of remembered. You know, he remembered a little different some things than I
Yeah.
did, but basically that was
Yeah.
the same sort of thing.
Well, where did he live on?
He lived on
Grove?
Grove Street.
Oh, Grove.
Grove Street, yeah.
Dean Fairbanks?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Where in Grove?
Um,
Oh, one of those houses that backs up
right.
to the
Not,
church
not
lot?
the one, not the one, it would be the second one up from the one on the corner, which was the moving guy. Thayer.
Thayer,
Just up one up from him.
going up towards
Going
the
up
school?
the street, yeah.
Okay.
They lived there. And, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But we used to play on the common in the summer. You know, you could go there, we played baseball at night, and some of the kids from Woodville used to come over to Hopkinton, and
Summer ride, probably.
Tony's father, Tony Alexander's father, and his brother, Bobby, they were always over in Hopkinton playing.
So right in the center of town.
In the
Right
common?
Right in
Yeah.
the park,
And
right
how
there.
did they get there?
Well,
They
people
have a
thought,
car.
some they
it's
found,
like-
and you know, actually, this Chester McManus, he's long dead, so he doesn't mind if I mention this. He worked for the post office, and you're not supposed to, when you're
Oh,
trucks, give rides,
Yeah.
like Ann Davis.
Yeah.
He'd give her a ride over to Woodville, or give them rides back to Hopkinton, or whatever.
But for people that lived outside of the center of town.
Yeah.
Like
Give them a
Russ
ride.
Ellsworth,
Yes.
who
He lived
on,
over on
South Street.
Yeah.
But most people lived
A
in
lot
the
of
town,
us lived
right?
in
Yeah.
a,
I mean, in the center
Yes.
is where most of the population.
Sure.
lived.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, it
With
was.
some exceptions.
And the town hall was where everything took place. I mean, we graduated from it.
Upstairs?
You didn't.
No, I didn't, but
She's younger.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, you graduated from the town hall, we had
Wow.
dances at the
Yeah.
town hall, we had town meetings at the town hall, and my dad had the sound system for the town meeting, and we also roped him into the sound system at 1 Ash Street, which used to be the gymnasium, where we had sock hops. And he'd have to rig it up, and then he'd go home. I don't even remember whether we had chaperones. There was no need.
Miss Harris?
I
No?
don't know.
No, these were just sock hops.
Yeah.
At 1 Ash Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I can remember
Wide
going
open.
upstairs. Couldn't
Yes,
I?
you
Were
could. There was
balconies?
balcony all around.
Each side.
Was there?
Oh, yeah, no, that's,
around.
did it go
was
on
up-
on
no, I
each
don't
side?
think
I think so, you went
Each side of
upstairs.
the hall.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And was there also a balcony at town hall when you had
Yes,
town
yes,
meetings?
yes.
I can remember that.
There was the balcony, there was first floor, second floor, and the balcony.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you could look down on things, but every single important event as a child growing up was there.
Yeah.
And on town events, and
Yeah.
there would be a fair there, there were
Well, they had
shows, they
yeah.
put on
That's
shows.
right, minstrel shows.
Minstrel
Minstrel
shows,
shows, yeah.
Mr. Interlocutor, we had minstrel shows.
Yeah.
At Town Hall.
Yeah.
Yes,
Was the inside significantly different than what it is today?
Oh,
The
yes,
upstairs
it was
certainly
wide
was.
open.
Yeah, it was wide
yeah,
open, yeah.
the second floor was wide open, and
Wood
Mr.
floors.
Garrison, who was the,
Police chief.
Oh, that's
no,
right.
well, he was too, but Mr. Garrison, when he retired from police chief, he became the custodian.
Oh, did he?
And so I went in the 7th grade, like I said, this is really bizarre. But half of the 2nd grade was split because they no longer fit all together in the high school. I guess that was it.
The old high school?
Yes.
Second grade or seventh?
7th.
Oh, okay.
So half the 7th grade
Oh.
went to the town hall for 7th grade. And Mr. Garrison would come into the classroom and ask the boys to help him set up the chairs for town meeting or whatever. So we were downstairs.
So you had a big 7th grade? No.
28 graduated. These weren't big classes.
But they still had to split.
There was some reason that, that there was an increase. Well, everyone used to sit. 6th grade was over there.
Okay, and they're talking
7th
about
grade on went to the old high school.
the old high school being the brick structure on.
Yes.
For people that
Yes.
might not even know that.
They
It was
might
built
not
in the
even know that.
1890s
Right,
on.
most people.
Yeah,
my
Main
grandchildren
Street.
can't believe anyone
Yeah.
went to that school. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
And where did the 6th grade, 1 through 6 went to center?
Yes,
I guess it did in my, no, actually it did
I
in my
think it
age.
must have still
Yeah.
for you,
it did.
right?
Yes, but my brother Bill had to go, was it just 7th or, he might have gone 6th and 7th. He went to the 6th grade in the town hall
Okay.
because he
Ann
had,
Marcy was telling me she went there.
She did?
Well, my
sometime.
son went, David went to there, when he was, I think he was in the 5th grade.
he went
For
with
some reason, they had to have the class in the
town
town
hall.
hall.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you
Oh.
why, but
So that
I
was,
did-
So at different
Town
periods
hall.
of time when they had
yeah,
bumper crops of
Problems.
children,
Yeah, it was
they
just
would,
a,
they
it
would
was just a
accommodate
brief
them in
few
the.
years there, there
Yeah.
wasn't too
Oh,
long.
yeah, they
and
didn't
then-
stay long,
Because then
just-
they built Elmwood School.
Yeah.
And then they built the
The
middle,
high-
what's the middle school
Yeah,
now, the high
the
school,
high
and
school.
then of course on
The
and
new
on and
one,
on from
right.
there.
Right.
But for a lot of years, those two
Yeah,
schools,
they
that's
had
all there was.
overflow or whatever it was, they had to
Yeah,
put them
overflow.
in the town hall.
And I think my mother went to the center school, and she was born in '07. Do you think that could be so?
Well, it was built in 24.
Right, I was going to say, it built, so
Where
where,
did she go?
where did
Well,
she
they
go?
they had a couple
One
of,
day
they had some
schoolhouse.
difference, they had one on Hayden Road, there was one in Bear Hill.
Yes, by Dr. Love's.
Yeah.
Well, she must have gone to the Hayden Road one
Hayden
then,
Road, one
which was
probably.
way down there, and she
Yeah,
lived on Price
probably.
Street.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, way back, there were, I think there were seven.
There were
seven
several
schools,
different
yeah.
ones in different
Yeah.
places.
That's an interesting thing, we'll have to research that, you
Yeah.
know, where did she go?
Where
Yeah.
did she go to
Yeah.
first grade?
Where did she, do you know where she graduated from?
She couldn't graduate because she was the oldest girl of 9 children, and her mom
And
went
what was her name?
Anastasia Veronica Pine, and then it became Terry. So her,
P-Y-N-E.
Yep,
Yeah.
P-Y-N-E, yep, there were nine children.
You're Pine, okay.
So-
You needed Chartland.
I know.
I
So
Of
her, her mom was pregnant with the 9th baby, or 10th, might be 10th baby, I think there were 9 survivors. And May 21st, whatever that year was, I have it written somewhere. And the girl, everybody went to school. And wherever they were though, Edna told me they were walking home for lunch from school. So there was a school down
Within.
here, I don't think they were down Hayden Road, they must have
It
been
might
one
have
of the
been
other
a
7.
Cedar Street.
There could have
School or
been.
something down in there. I have sort of a feeling there might have been one down in that area.
That's
too.
interesting. Yep.
Yeah,
Good question.
mm.
So anyway, Edna was walking up Grove Street going to Price, where that was the family homestead, and Dot Pond was there, Dot Kenny in those days, and she said to my little dear aunt, who was probably 8 or something like that, "Well, your mother died today. They took her out in an ambulance." So she hemorrhaged, and she and the baby both died on the very same day. So there were 3 older boys than Mom. Or,
When was this again?
well,
About?
I would say, if she was '07 and then add 8 or 9 years, 16?
1960?
16, yeah. So there were 2 older boys, Lonnie and Fred, or Fred and Lonnie, and then Mom. So the dad was left alone, and he was, everybody was poverty-stricken. He was a plumber or did anything that he could do, I guess. And so Mom had to quit school at age 13, so 07, 13, somebody do the math, I can't.
Yeah.
So she then raised all of those children, and she was brilliant, absolutely.
At age 13?
Amazing.
Took that
Isn't that
responsibility
amazing?
on?
Had to, yeah.
On what street?
Price,
Price.
9 Price.
Mhm.
And my cousin Ann Flannery Roberts lives there now.
Is it a little tiny house?
Yep. If you come in from
Imagine.
Grove
Yeah.
and you go up, Mom
Between-
says,
I know it, I just can't, at the
Yeah.
right, I'm thinking
No,
Price,
it's
which one, yeah.
exactly. If
Yeah.
you come in from Grove Street, there's this big house that got redone. It's very pretty on the right. If you go up Price Street from Grove, and there's a big house on the right, the very next little house, it's just got a little driveway and a 1-car garage, and they all lived in that house. Mom said that they used to sleep in their bed end to end. There were,
Like sardines?
yeah, because there weren't bunk beds.
And Price Street goes to church, right?
Yes, goes
Yeah.
right to church. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I walk that way all the time, yeah.
I want to say it's 7 or 9 Price, but there's a funny house on Grove Street that's kind of a ranch you look at.
Yes.
And then if you turn up, there's a nice looking gray
Is that Tuitt's? Did they redo that whole house?
No, Tuitt's is on the other
This
side.
is on the other side.
Oh,
yeah.
the other
If
side.
you come in
Okay.
from Grove.
I love that street.
Yeah,
It's
isn't
the
that a nice
cutest little
street?
street,
Nice
love that street,
neighborhood.
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
So she did a fine job, and
Yeah.
she had to do it all. I mean, there were babies. Joe Pine was probably 2, Aunt Veronica was probably 1, and all the way up to 13, 15. So she was, there seemed to be one every year. So, so I think by the time she had number 4, she was probably pretty sick of children, especially a rebellious
So
one.
much.
Yeah, but everybody loves her. You know, she was very, very kind to the neighbors and to any child. She was a person who just loved children.
Did she tell you things about her childhood and Hopkinton?
Yeah, she did. They were poor. They were absolutely positively poor, and I think the person who was the most lovely to them was Mary Cronin Morrissey's grandmother, because they lived up at the the Calvin Cronin funeral home, beautiful home, and that woman had, I don't know, she maybe just had her mom Mary, but whatever was done, she would send clothes down to them. Or
Was that a funeral? That was the funeral home at that
Yes,
time?
yes,
Still?
not quite that large.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it wasn't that big a building, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was but they had the most wonderful time. It was a meeting place. Price Street was a meeting place.
Yes. Yeah.
And the guy, they played
Everybody
cards.
helped
Yeah,
other families, yeah.
they were wonderful
There
people.
was
Those
I
Pines.
think there was an awful lot of that helping each other.
Right.
Because I remember growing up, a neighbor would help another one paint, another one would help them take down a tree.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much bartering, that
Right.
type of thing, or watching
Yeah.
somebody's kids. Well,
Right.
so-and-so was in the hospital having another one, and the neighbor took over.
That's
There
right.
was an awful
Yeah.
lot of that type of thing. I remember when my father came home from the service, I think I was 6, and he started a little business. So we lived on the 2nd floor, and he started a little radio repair business that would have been at that
And again, this is Church Street.
Church Street, 11 Church Street. And people would bring him electric razors, toasters, whatever, and he'd go to the people's houses and fix things, and hardly anyone had
No.
any money.
No.
Very little money changed hands. You sort of say it was really kind of pathetic, but over time, it grew a bit. And sometimes he'd come home with a mismatched chair, and somebody had racked up a whole big bill, and they couldn't pay it, so they gave him this chair.
Yeah.
So we'd have a chair in this room, not matched anyway. But I mean, that's the way it was in the house, and that's what you did.
Sure.
And when television came, we had a television set for maybe 6 years with no cover. That's the way ours was at home.
Just
Wow.
the tube?
The big tube was there. Just that big tube and all the other little stuff. And you'd sit and watch it, and first it was the color pattern, test
Yes,
pattern, or
test
whatever,
pattern,
with all
yeah.
the pretty colors.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids in the neighborhood would come and sit and watch
Well, you were a
it.
show-off if you had colors.
Well, that was the color pattern. Well, that was what the test pattern was on everybody's to start.
Was it really? I can only remember black and
It
white.
had color.
I didn't remember
It
that.
Oh,
had
really?
color, yeah. It did, for some reason,
Yeah.
the test pattern was like that, and it came on like at 5. There was nothing on until
No.
that
Right.
part of the day, and then it was Howdy Doody.
Howdy
Yeah.
Doody, yeah.
Whatever.
Versus Hopple and Cassidy.
Yes.
Fight in my house.
So you knew what everybody was watching,
Sure.
because that's all
That's
it
all
was.
it
That's
was,
all it
yeah.
was.
And then came
For
John
children.
Cameron Swayze.
Yes.
Wasn't he a
Oh,
news
yes, the
person at
news,
some
yeah,
point?
yeah.
Yeah.
And Dave Garroway
Yeah.
and Sentimental Journey, wasn't that his theme song?
Oh,
I still
yeah.
love that. He
And
sat on a
the
stool.
monkey.
Then he had
Yes.
Mr. Muggs or something.
Yeah.
Was that his monkey's name?
Yeah.
Everyone watched that because that's all it was.
Yeah.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
On our main street, I was trying to remember, kind of way back, I think we had a First National, but I thought we
We did.
also had an A&P.
Yes, you
Did
did.
we have both?
Yes, when I came to town.
We had both.
Yeah.
Imagine a little town like this, we had both.
And then there was Cloa's little meat market.
Yes,
And
right.
Woods. And Woods'
Woods.
little meat market. So there were a lot of little grocery.
A lot of grocery
We
stores.
did, we had a lot of little grocery
Yeah.
stores.
And remember those other nice people? Pierce, what's their name? Pierce, they had the
Oh,
5
yeah.
and 10.
Yes, and the 5 and
They
10.
were nice people.
And there was
Where was that?
You know where Jack
corner
Danahy's?
of Walcott, right?
Walcott, yeah. Next to Jack Danahy's maybe? Or maybe,
It was there.
It was
where
Jack Danahy's,
It
okay.
was where Jack Danahy's was.
okay.
For people who wouldn't know, Jack Denny, so
Okay.
Walcott and Maine.
If you're
Maine.
coming
Yeah.
from Ashland, or either way, and you take a right on Walcott, that first little place on the left, it's now, God knows, it was a stove shop for a
No,
while.
it's pizza, I think
Manja,
now, isn't it?
Manja.
Pizza.
Is it?
It's,
Is it?
yeah, it's Manja
On the
Pizza
corner?
Yeah.
in 2013.
Yeah.
Oh my.
And there used to be a, Miss Cadell had a store, which would be the end of the bank. It was a long, thin store, just like the
Up
one
on Main Street,
on Main Street, with bank, where
where the bank is.
Middlesex Bank is. It was one long store, and she had women's clothes and, you know, scarves.
Unmentionable.
Unmentionables and little things you might go and buy. And then DP Day had a
Yes.
I
haberdashery.
remember that store.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
then
there was a shoe store, wasn't there? Oh, was that his?
I think that was
he had
his.
shoes
I
in
think
the
he
back.
had shoes in the back. I think
Yeah.
that's, yeah,
Okay.
there were shoes
So
in the
you
back.
wouldn't really, you could do what you needed to do, get what you needed to
Oh,
do in
right.
Yeah.
Hopkinton. You
Yeah.
didn't have
And
to
Emma's.
drive to
And
Framingham.
then Emma was down on,
Down the hill.
down the hill where the post office used to be.
But after the, you know, we did this place and then DP Days. Didn't Murphy have a place right in there?
He had his drugstore
Drugstore.
there originally.
For a while.
Before it moved down.
Yeah.
Then you also paid your Edison bill there,
Yeah.
and that was Bill Riley.
Yes, exactly.
And you go in and pay your bill. That would be like where Lovely Lady is, maybe in around there.
Yeah.
I love the era of small business, you know,
Yeah.
little
Yes.
shops.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
it's a nice thing, yeah.
It was nice, yeah.
And the post office was down, of course, at the foot of Cedar Street.
Where the gas station
Where the
is
gas
now.
station is now,
Yeah.
on the
And
corner of
Emma's was-
Cedar and Main.
Yeah.
And
this was part of that building?
Yes, that was sort of beside it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that little funky place where you could get,
Your little restaurant.
yeah, Edith Joe's, we used to say.
Yeah.
Hitching? Hutchins?
No.
Hutches?
Hutches.
Hutches.
Yeah,
Hutchins,
is a good
right,
spot,
yeah.
Yeah, and then we had a little taxi stand.
Yes, we did. Did Don Hitchings
Don.
drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, when he came back from the service, he did drive, but he didn't own it. I
No,
think.
he didn't.
Was it Flannery? No, who did Barbara Flannery marry?
Jean the Barber.
Jean the Barber.
I never know Jean's last name, Jean the Barber.
The barber from the barber shop that,
He had a barber shop,
He had
not the one, the
Not
Wards.
the
I
one.
can't remember his last name either, isn't that funny?
I
so
know.
barber shop where Hopkinton Gourmet is currently? Or next to?
No, that
the
was
other side
Rose's Beauty Parlor.
Okay.
Rose Fecto.
Rose Fecto's Beauty Parlor.
The
That's
other
where
side
the
of the
gourmet
street,
coffee
on the
shop
south
is.
side of the, I mean,
Yeah.
the north side.
And then where Kalala's is, that was the town barn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the town barn. And Hitchings used to be old Mr. Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, old Mr. Adams owned it before.
Oh, did he live down on, what's the street that you'll know? Goes right down to the school, center school. At Loretta Maha lived. Park Street.
Yeah.
Did he live back there, old Adams? Oh, no, he was Lil Dempsey's father, was he? Remember?
Yes,
Lil
yes
Dempsey.
he was, yes he was. I believe so.
So she was my mother's age, so he was,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's true.
But he owned that for a long time, and then when Don Hitchings got out of the service, at first he did a few other things, but then he bought
He
that.
did?
And that
So you're
became
referring to Hitchings Hardware?
Hitchings Hardware.
Which was for all those years but is no longer
Right,
next
now
to
it's a
Kalala's.
clean-
But it wasn't a taxi stand there
Not
where
there.
the hardware store
No.
was, behind, kind of up the hill where Kalala's is.
In that lot, like in the
In
parking
that
lot?
lot, it
Is that
was
what
just
you
a
remember?
little
Yeah,
shack
stand, yeah.
like thing, a stand.
Yeah.
Now they
That's
sell
what I
hot dogs.
remember. Yeah, it would have been just a little stand.
Just
Oh,
a
yeah.
little thing that's a
Right.
taxi.
Well, there used to be a taxi thing up over the Golden Spoon.
But what?
Yes, there was.
Yeah, and that was the fellow from Maple Street, but that was
Oh.
in more recent years, I mean, a long
Yeah.
time ago.
So what was the town barn, the town barn? I have heard of
The
it
The
before.
highway department.
Oh,
They
okay.
kept their
It was
trucks.
called the town barn, I know, everybody called it the town barn. And
I think was it a barn prior to that, maybe?
Well,
It
I
was
think
barn
it
just
yet?
a shape, it was like a
Okay.
big
It
barn.
was huge.
And
It probably was, Linda. I'll bet you we
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
back
that
in
it
the
was,
day,
and that
when they
it
had
used to
horses
be.
and buggies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Probably
And when
was.
they had
Yes.
all the factories, maybe it was.
Yes,
It probably was.
Yeah.
But it
And there
was.
was a room upstairs, I can remember we had Girl Scouts
Oh,
upstairs.
I never went
in
in
a
the
room.
You did?
Mm. My mother and Barbara Adams, I think, had the first Girl Scout troop in
Oh.
town. And we used to have our meetings up there for 1 year,
No
I guess,
kidding.
and then came to our houses or whatever.
Hmm.
But that's,
Oh,
that
I didn't
wasn't
know
it. But yeah, it was an interesting Main Street. There was plenty going on.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
It
a
was
lot
busy.
more than what's
Yeah.
there right now.
Now, you know what the Gassets used to have the gas station
Mhm.
across from it. Was there something there, was it a tenement before that, or in your memory, was it always Gassets?
I think it was always gas.
Okay.
I don't
You think
remember
that
it as being any.
Well, that's,
As
when
far
I came, it was
Yeah.
always gas,
Yeah.
it's like
I know.
a gas station, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I don't
Yeah.
really remember anything else before that.
And the little quip about the television showing up here. I was the youngest of 4, and after dinner, we didn't have a TV, but after dinner, the 3 of them, the older siblings, they would leave and they were going out, and I said, where are they going? And Ann said, we're going to watch Stevie. I said, who's Stevie? And I wasn't allowed to go Stevie, and it used to make me so mad. And I said, why can't I go see Stevie? Mom said, no, it's television, it's TV. They're going to watch TV, they're not speaking properly. I want to go watch Stevie. Yeah. Funny.
And where did you grow up? What house?
98 Hayden Road, the Cultural Arts Association place, that's where I grew up. Yeah. That my father was born in that house. And up in that attic.
What year would your father have been born?
My father was born in 1889.
In that house,
In that
which
house.
is currently, it's not cultural, it's the Hopkinton Center for the Arts now.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I mean, literally born in the house?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that is
I
so
have,
cool.
up in that attic, and I've always meant to do, I'm a procrastinator, but is the beautiful old brass bed that he was born in. And we used to have it years ago when I used to be up in one of these bedrooms, and I moved to California for 7 years or so, and we had to move everything out because Luke and the boys were moving in, so then there it says I should just find
But describe what it looked like. Then there was a silo to the
the
left
silo
of the
was
house,
there.
and it would have been farmland behind.
Oh, Lord, right, so this house is built on the
Yeah.
far end of my father's land.
Talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
He had hundreds of acres, and his parents before him, and I think not a grandfather. I think it was his folks who were the initial people. And
So what's your father's name?
Thomas James Terry. And you're going to talk to my brother, Thomas James Terry Jr. We're going to
Oh,
get
good.
him.
He
He'd
agreed to
do
that,
it,
yeah.
He'd be thrilled to do it.
Yeah.
It's just so wonderful to think about what it was like. I
know,
love
I
it.
know.
It's refreshing. You know?
It was wonderful. We had more fun. They were in the barn. We had cows. You saw the milk bottle that Cook gave us.
Where's the milk bottle?
I just put it back.
Okay.
Oh, you want? I can get it. And then, so we had a milk delivery business, and Dad sold, way back when, I guess it was Coke, not what they have today for Coke. Coke preceded coal as something that you burned, I guess.
Yeah.
And after coal, he then bought oil. So that store, when you come down to down Pleasant Street and you stop at Main, right across the street, there's a repair shop.
Right.
That was
Main
my father.
Street, yeah.
Main Street, yeah.
Yeah.
That my father and brothers ran that. He bought that after a while, and it was he put the oil business there, and they had gas pumps and repair work and all of that stuff. So they had that for many years. But they worked. A lot of it was out of the house, and my mother was responsible. She just was a wonderful human being. She did the book. She answered the phone. She was, and people would come and pay money, and she was just gracious and generous and
Always.
loved people.
Always,
She was just a good soul.
Well, I tell you, when we first came to town, we came from northern New Jersey, was pretty urban, suburban,
Yes.
very, city-like. And we came to Hopkinton, and
And again,
we thought
about
we
what
were
year?
in
Yeah.
48.
Yeah.
We thought we were in the 19th century. I mean, cows up the street and
Sometimes in your yard.
Yeah, but I must say that the Terry children adopted myself and my sister and my brother.
Oh,
They just took us in, and made us welcome. We lived at the ball field, which is where the new high school is now.
Yep.
And we lived up there, tennis courts and the ball field and
Yeah.
whatever else we could
Yes,
play with
yeah.
up there. And if it hadn't been for the Terry family, we would have been hiking back to New Jersey to get out of
There were
here.
3 unhappy children.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so you and Ann are the same.
Ann and I,
And
yeah.
my sister Ann, she's the eldest.
Yeah, she was in my grade, although she didn't.
And my sister, Lois.
Yes.
And Lois
Same
too.
class.
Yeah, same class. And I was going into the 9th grade, and as was Ann, but then she came maybe the first week of
Yeah.
school, and then she disappeared into Framingham.
I'll tell you why.
Was it Marion?
No, Framingham High.
Framingham High
And
School.
Tommy right with her. Tommy was
And
with
I
her.
was lost. I
With
said,
her,
oh
too.
my gosh, I lost my friend.
Oh,
I lost
Wait,
my,
I'm confused. Why did they?
my
they,
guide,
they left?
Oh, yes,
Left Hopkinton?
yes. They left Hopkinton because Dad was displeased with Mr. Moriarty, who was an alleged math teacher, and he was hearing stories from the kids. So they must be. Tommy graduated in '54 and Ann in '50. They're like a year and a half apart.
Yeah.
So Dad went to, I want to say, the town hall. Would that make sense? I don't know. 7th, 8th graders? I don't know. So wherever Mr. Moriarty was teaching, he walked into the class.
7th grade.
At the town hall, then that's exactly where it was then,
Yeah.
okay. So Dad went in and found the math class sitting there just fooling around, and himself with his feet on the desk reading the sports
This is
page.
Mr. Moriarty?
Mr.
Do you
Moriarty!
recall him being that kind of a teacher? You didn't learn much math then.
No, the teacher.
No,
But you know, the funny thing is, I went into 8th grade and I did fine, but don't know why. Just luck.
Yes.
Because that's what he would do. He'd send you over to Brown and Smith to get a frap and the newspaper. And he'd read. And then when we had tests, as we're taking the test, he's putting answers up on the board.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that awful?
And we do remember that.
Yes.
We all had that same story, the half of the class
Really?
that went down.
And nobody complained, right?
But nobody, who cared? By the way, he
Well,
worked
some
for
of the-
another
but
30
that-
years.
Yeah.
Right, but that's why some
Right.
kids ended up going to Framingham.
Yeah.
Well,
See, rather
I
than
know
remove
that,
the
but
teacher,
that's-
you-
Yeah, good
Yeah.
for your father for
But I
getting
know
you
it.
out of there.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Although you
No.
would have
Yeah, that was-
survived, I mean.
Yeah,
And
he
Tom.
was still around teaching when I was in there. She's
Yeah.
9 years older than I am.
Yeah.
And so,
So you came back.
yes, I did for after April vacation. And so my sister was in New York, and I thought, well, it all made the perfect sense at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in March or February, April, I guess. And then I got to New York. It's rainy. I probably had $20, which was $1 million, I think. So finally, I had to call my sister, and I said, "Don't call them." And she said, "Well, I have to call them. They're furious, frantic." I mean, so I stayed there, and Dad finally, anyway, my father said, "What is it that you want?" And I said, "I want out of that school. I want to graduate with my friends. I never participated there. I would get out of there and come home and be with my friends." So he said, "Then you will do that." So that was April vacation. And the following Monday, I can remember this. Now I'm talking April of 1961. I can remember Mom made me a lavender. We had these horrifying uniforms at Marion. Short sleeve, Peter Pan something with this little horrible blue thing, a jumper, a gabardine jumper, knee socks. So she had made this pretty skirt and I had a blouse, and I can remember walking from the farm right next door to the high school. So I was obnoxious there, and Mr. Whitaker, who was a lovely, lovely man. Mr. Whitaker, did you ever know him?
No.
Nice man. He came from Woodville. And he said, "Okay, enough. I have had exactly enough of you today. You're going to have a PM." That was a detention, whatever. And he said, "What is your name?" And I said, "It's Mildred Gerber." He said, "All right, Mildred, we will see you in detention." I said, "Yes, we will, yes." So Carol Terry went home. The next day I came in, and I know it was crazy. The next day I came in, and Mr. Whitaker said, I was in class, he said, "Where were you yesterday?" I said, "When?" He said, "Detention." I said, "You never called my name." He said,
Oh,
"I
you're
did."
so fresh.
He said, "Well, what is your name?" And I said, "It's Carol Terry." He said, "Was that your name yesterday?" I said, "No."
I didn't
Mildred.
So, but that it was great. It was all fun. Everything, you know.
It kept things lively.
It did.
Right.
So Doris, you came when you were in the 9th grade?
I came, entering
Yeah.
the 9th grade.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I stayed here for 3.5 years, and then we moved back to New Jersey. But, once we got settled in and in school and in sports and on the teams and all that, we finally decided it wasn't such a bad place to live after all.
So you came back.
Yeah, then I came back, got married and came back, and I was married in 52, and we lived up on the corner of Mayhew Street and Main, big apartment houses there. And then we bought a little house on Clapham Place, which is where the center trail is now. Yeah, we had a little cape there. And 2 of my children were born there. And then we moved to Chamberlain Street, and our youngest one was a year old, I think she was. And So they've all grown up in Hopkinton, and you know, it's home.
Because I have to pick the child up at daycare before 5:30.
Oh,
Is that,
stay as long
we've
as you
been
wish.
chatting that long?
It doesn't matter. You stay as long as you wish. I'll leave the door locked, so when you want, just pull the door shut. And I'm gonna be at my brother's house tonight for dinner.
Okay, all right, well, very nice to talk to you. That
Thank
was
you very
terrific.
much.
Thank
You will
you.
edit some of this.
I'm not sure how it'll work, but we'll look into it.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much. I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah.
So my kids are townies, but I'm not.
Mhm.
My husband.
Well, you say that, but you were a child.
Yeah,
They're
my
being a
husband
third,
was
you know.
born here. He was born way over near Laborers Training, off on East Street. I'm way over there, and he was born over there on
You
the
know
farm.
everything about
Well, tell
Yeah,
us,
I mean-
yeah, that's right. Tell us a little bit about that, you know?
I don't know anything about that because he was the type who would never
He didn't talk
never
about...
really reminisce, never talk about anything, and I'd ask him questions about his mother or his, the farm or whatever. I don't know. Go ask Caroline, who was his youngest sister, and go ask her. I don't know.
But a farm, but it was a farm. And tell us
It
his
was
name.
a farm, and the story is that his father, my husband's grandfather, invented the wooden pegs that go in the
Well, he's famous. So what was his name?
John Walker.
John Walker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never met him. He was long gone before I came to town. And
The peg that attached, I think, the top
yeah,
of the duke to the sole.
I don't know how it worked, but that's
Wow.
what he did. Yeah, but otherwise they had a farm. They had cows, and I guess that's it.
A dairy farm.
Well, I think it was only I don't think it was like Terry's farm with a business of selling milk, which they did, and anyway. So that was something. But yeah, he was born in town, and he knew every.
But tell us
street.
his name.
My husband.
Yeah.
Cookie Kumlin.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah. Yeah.
He knew every inch of this town,
Yes.
and the town was his life.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care about going anywhere or doing anything else. He had to be in town.
Mm-hmm.
And so many questions come up. You think, oh, if he was only here, he would know why that drain, why the puddle in the road keeps. Because when they put a traffic light up at the high school.
I've heard people say if Cookie Kumlin were
Yeah.
around, he'd
Yeah.
know. I've heard
Oh.
that.
Yeah, they put the traffic light up at the high school, and they had, I don't know how many engineers figuring out how to place it, and because there was a lot of water always there, that drained. I can't remember where
There's
it
an
went.
issue still with
There's
water
still,
there.
and he tried to tell them, it's not going to work the way you've got it set up, the street drains and all that. Well, these were engineers with, all those big long letters behind their name. And so now when I go by and I see the puddle there, I say, yeah.
Yeah, the big puddle in front of the gas station.
And
Yeah.
if we asked Dale Colella, he solved the problem of the water coming down Grove Street into
And
the
that was a
store,
huge
into the
problem.
store, and going across.
That was awful for
Yeah.
years and
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
You talking about Colella's?
Yeah.
Yeah, went right
They
down
still
through
have the-
Hitchings
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
forth, yeah.
Yeah.
And he told them why. The
Mm.
water was going there, so they did fix some of it, but I think.
And he certainly was a strong advocate for the library. He loved
Oh,
the
yeah.
library, and on Tuesdays, when I was there at
Yeah.
the library, on Tuesdays invariably, he'd come over. Marge Pelquin just adored him.
Oh yeah, she was
Before
sweet.
Cook would come
Yeah.
in, she'd go into the ladies' room and fix her hair. He'd come at tea time and have whatever we were having for tea, but while he was there, fix a light,
Mhm.
get up on a ladder and do something. He really cared, he really cared about everything
Every
in
time
town.
in town.
He
yeah.
just did. He
Yeah.
just always
He had his
did.
regular route. He'd go to 1 Ash Street. See where you know candy in this candy dish? What's the matter with you
he
guys?
always kept certain things.
And he was
that
always,
he liked.
yelling at people like that. And if he didn't yell at you or
Did he work in the town?
oh, he was a highway.
Okay.
I worked on the
See, I
highway
think-
for
yeah,
45 years.
Yeah.
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 I worked under several bosses, supervisors, towns out.
Everybody knew.
super-
Everybody
super
knew
nice.
him, and I think
Yeah,
anytime
and he-
there would be
yeah.
problems, he was always one of the ones involved in.
Yeah,
See, those are
solving
the connection and the ownership to the town. You know,
Yeah,
that's
he-
it's
he
kind of
did.
different
He
now,
was
huh?
huge.
and he would get up really early, he'd go over to the spoon, of course Jean would be, opening up, and
Yeah.
he'd be sure that she was all right. And on
Which
his way-
Jean?
Jean Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned later that, well, I'm still learning things about him because he never told me, The phone would ring and he'd say, oh, I gotta go check this train, Lo and behold, he'd be down Dottie and Artie's Pines having coffee, But I didn't know that, I mean, he's fixing the trains.
Sure.
So, anyway, but after he passed away, there was a little letter in, I forget what, the Independent or something. This gal from Woodville, I forget her name. She was a runner, and every morning she'd run before daybreak. It was dark, and he would go over and check on her to be sure
Yeah.
she was okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And he told her, you've got to get a fluorescent
Something,
vest or
yeah.
something that reflects because it's dangerous. And so he knew what everybody was doing.
He did.
Yeah.
And that's such a feeling of comfort in a small town. To know that
Yeah.
there are people here
Right.
working for our town that are so very caring and cautious about what goes on in your town. It's
And
a great
interested,
feeling.
yeah.
And interested,
Interested
really
in the-
interested in it. And right there to help fix problems of any kind.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like that
It's a,
now.
no,
Yeah,
it's
now
a
there's so
wonderful,
much-
small
Yeah,
town feel.
Right.
Yeah.
And he could go fix somebody's drain or dig something, and he didn't have to go through all the red tape,
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Go to
just
the
do it.
manager and the board of selectmen and get permits.
None of
and
all
just-
that,
No,
no.
just drive up and dig a hole. So.
Small town, another story that I have is about when my father did come home from the service and started his
So
business.
from the Second World War.
Second World War in the Navy. We had to have a telephone because he was going to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
So the family that lived downstairs were the Danahees, and a lot of people in town would remember Danahees. It was Ruth and Paul were the parents, and Joanne was my age, David was your age, and Paul was older. And then my family was in the middle, and then on the third floor was a variety of people over a variety of years. Now for the first many years we lived there, that I can recall when I wasn't a baby, it was storage upstairs for Danahees and for us, because for years it was just the two families. Because we had coal bins and so forth, the cellars were dungeon cellars. But anyway, he had a telephone, so if anybody wanted Ruth or Paul or the kids downstairs, they would call us. And we'd tap on the pipe behind our stove and go out in the hall and yell, Ruth, Paul, Joanne, Dave, whoever. And then over the years, the first person that lived up there was Ann Click's aunt. It would have been Claire Sullivan, who was also my 6th grade teacher. She lived up there, and then several other people, and then eventually John Cahill and his wife Evelyn. The first year they got married, they lived up there. Well, it was Party City. And also, everyone called us for John or Evelyn. So then you go out in the hall and yell, up the stairs, John or Evelyn. So it got to be sort of funny. We were answering Danahees, Cahills, Kenners, and so forth. But it was funny. Not too many people did have telephones, or certainly not everyone had a telephone. And there were the party lines.
Right.
We didn't have a party line because it was business.
Oh.
And my sister and I really weren't much allowed to talk on the phone.
No.
I'm not a telephone talker anyway, never have been. But we weren't allowed to, except to take messages and things for him. But that was a funny thing too. And I think we were the only ones that had a car. So, well, we used to walk everywhere anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
parents didn't bring it. You didn't drive your kids places.
Yeah, we walked.
You walked everywhere. Well, and bicycles. I mean, we used to ride, think nothing of riding over to Holliston to Walter's Dairy to get ice cream and riding back on your bicycle. Riding over to the lake, it was before 495.
Right.
Ride over to Maspinock,
To
you know,
Max.
on your
What was the
bicycle to
name of
Max
that?
Cabin.
Max
Cabin.
Cabin, yeah.
But you did those things. You climbed trees. You ran, you jumped, you hopped, you were outside. when you were kids or outside, and then when we were older, we all played sports.
Sure.
Whatever sports there were, we played. And then, you know, in high school, you got out at 1 o'clock. I always had a job.
Yeah, I did too.
You know.
Get on the bus and go to Framingham and work at the Five and Dime.
Yeah.
Did you work, oh, well, you had your babysitting, but did you work in town anywhere?
No, never.
Not in town.
Until later on in life, I did substituting in Hopkinton.
And you did the director of the library.
I
job.
did, yeah. I used to teach in Natick. That's where I taught before I had my family. And then after I had my first two and they went off to school, I did substituting here in Hopkinton. And then I had another baby and was home. By that time, my mother was very sick, so I was more or less needed there. They lived on Grove Street. And then I went to the library. So.
Yeah.
Then I went to the senior center and set up that library and keep that one going.
So Doris, was it different than, well, if you were in New Jersey, did you, and you weren't in a small town, and then you came here?
Yeah, it was very different. It was very different. But then when I worked at the library, well, as a kid, I always went to the New Jersey, my town library.
Yeah.
We lived in Westfield, and took my bike always down there at the library.
Yeah.
So when Betty Strong asked me if I wanted to work at the library, I jumped at the chance.
Yeah.
And
so when would that have been?
So in 65, 66, I'm thinking Janice was a baby. 66. I think she hired me. She said, I can only give you 50 cents an hour. I didn't care. I would pay to go to the library, you know.
Oh,
So,
she had puppet shows.
Oh,
she had wonderful things. I took over for her as the children's librarian.
I was the children's librarian. And,
So and it was upstairs at that time.
It was upstairs. But my sister-in-law tells me when there wasn't a children's library room up there, she used to take piano lessons. Ruthie used to take piano lessons from one of the, maybe Dean's, not Dean's.
Oh, it would have been Dean's
mother,
aunt. It would have, Chase.
Yeah.
Lived on Ash Street.
She used to take piano lessons up there.
At the library.
At the library.
You know,
upstairs.
we came across something, and because I work at the library.
Yes.
Yeah, we came across something about a piano being in the. We were where would the piano have been?
Yeah.
How'd they get it
Upstairs.
there? How would they get it up the stairs?
Because in the Kiwanis Club,
Yeah, they
years
took it
later,
over.
in the 50s, did they?
Yeah, and then the King Club was
Converted.
the ones that painted the shelves and did all that.
Yeah.
That was their project.
Right.
Yeah, before that it was, they were just some church pews, it looked like,
Yeah.
and that's where they had their meetings.
Yeah,
Right,
we had meetings and
Mhm.
so forth, but no, she took piano lessons
Huh.
up there. And
Gosh.
years later, she gave piano lessons, not there, but
Mhm.
yeah, it turned out to be a nice children's room when they
It
did
did,
it. But we had a good time, and then I had Margot Foster. Well, first I worked with Stella McDonough
Mhm.
and Roanne Dearborn, and I took over from Roanne Dearborn. And
We do have photographs of that time at the library. I've seen them.
we had a good time. This is Bessie Dickerman
And
it was
we added ours. When Doris and I both was there, we had a big puppet theater. And we had a lot of puppet shows, and we did things like that, and used to like flannel boards with the kids, do stories, have them tell stories using flannel boards. I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved children's room. And sometimes, Dr. Goose, sometimes we marched, sometimes we did, and then you'd sit down and do something else and be quiet. And
one year at Polyarts, they asked, I forget who was the director of the Polyarts at that time. They asked us if we would bring our puppet theater over to the Common and do the puppet show. So they did. They hooked up some microphones, and Margot and I did. I don't know what we did, Little Red Riding Hood or some silly thing, but anyway, we did that. And one time we took it to Little Folk Farm over in Southville, But that was too much trouble because that was a big heavy
That was
thing.
a really big
Yeah,
one.
I forget even
I
who
don't know
made
what they
that.
did.
I was going to say, I wonder where it is.
I don't know.
I don't
what
know,
what
but
even
they
happened
decided
to
it was
that.
took up too much room.
Yeah, I think that was probably it.
Yeah.
Then we had a smaller one years later. I mean, it was
Yeah.
certainly okay, but not
Yeah,
like that big one
not
that you
too-
could really
Yeah.
put on a performance.
Right, we did that, we had a good time,
Yeah.
we just got to, sometimes.
That was fun. I mean, that library, just for me, holds so many good
Oh,
memories.
yeah. it
All
does.
through my life, from the time I was
Yeah.
little, even now, although I don't go in it that much, now it's still,
Well, you
it's
have
my
your-
library. Now
yeah.
I have books coming in my
You
ears
have
at
your
the
own
senior center.
library now.
Just trying to keep up with that. But
Yeah.
I just love it. And when when you talk about when there was a
Mhm.
conversation about maybe moving it somewhere, I have to say in my
Yeah,
heart,
it's very
I think
important to,
I
yeah,
know.
But,
keep it there.
I
Yeah.
just sort of feel it's such a perfect place for the library
Yeah.
to
Oh, it
be.
is.
Yeah,
And it's a lovely building,
yeah.
and the church was lovely. I remember
Yeah.
going into the church when it was the church.
Yeah.
And a couple of weddings and things there, and I loved that little church too. And when they incorporated it, it just
I know.
at the time when that was done, it seemed
Yeah, and that was Betty Strong that
yes,
did
yeah.
that.
and you'd think, oh, they're never going to use all of this.
Yeah, I know.
it just doesn't take long at all
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
I
where are we
know.
gonna put this, where
Yeah.
should we put that? And then the bell would ring, I
Mhm.
mean, they rang the bell all the time.
We used to. That's another thing my
Yeah.
father used to do with this, and he did the Christmas music.
Oh, did he?
All for
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
years, I bet he did the Christmas music up in the
From
little,
the town, yeah.
tower.
Explain that a little. So you mean that the Episcopal Church,
The bell tower, yeah.
which the bell tower there,
Yeah.
prior to being part of the library.
Yes, yeah.
he would,
They used
he
to
would-
ask my father. He apparently was one of the few people in town that had a sound system
Yeah,
that he could. They used it for the town meetings and everything,
Oh,
the
okay.
microphones and so forth. And so they asked him, and that's what he used to play the music from that tower, Christmas music.
From the tower
Yeah.
into the streets and into
Yeah,
the
went
town.
out,
Oh,
went
that's
out into,
nice.
went out
That's
into
really
the town.
nice.
And we did it. We did it.
we did it for many years, and
We
then
did it too. Yeah.
one year, somebody on Hayden Row complained about the music because it was keeping the baby awake.
Mhm.
And we only had it, what, 5 to 6
only-
or something, 5 to 7, it was very early in the
I
evening,
was
but
like-
somebody complained, keeping the baby awake, and then.
I did it longer than that. I had to go off at 9, and I
Yeah.
got a phone call. I got several phone calls from the police department, usually like in the middle of the night, 1 or 2.
Oh,
Somebody said the music is still playing, which it wasn't supposed to be. 'Cause
No.
Jack Talich had it rigged up so
Yeah.
that it went off at
Time.
9 or whatever, and obviously it didn't. So I said, okay, I'll be right up. So I pulled my clothes on and got up there, and the police cruiser just was sitting
Mhm.
outside, waited for me to go in. All I did was turn it off. I didn't reset
reset it, yeah.
I turned it off and went out, and I headed back home. And, there were Christmas decorations and things around. Anyway, I was tired. I got in my car and I headed back down the street, and I see these blue flashing lights behind me, and I'm thinking, what is this? So I stopped going down just about where Oliver's farm used to be there. I pull over, and I rolled down my window, and I said, I turned it off. I wasn't happy. He said, I know you did, but you're driving with no lights on.
So you were on your way back to
I was on my
Woodville.
way back to Woodville.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was so nice, I wish they would able to do it again, even early in the evening, because it gets dark,
Right,
early,
and I
just
think
to
things
see
like
it.
that.
Christmas
Just-
music, yeah, that sounds
That's
nice.
a small town
Yeah.
again. That's
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
you just say in a small town you can do things
Yeah.
like that. And,
Yeah,
and people like it. People like it.
yeah, I think people enjoy it.
Mm.
Not everybody, obviously. but-
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't want to go late at night. I mean, and
No,
ours
no.
was supposed to be off, and for some reason it didn't go off.
Yeah, I
But
think early in the evening
Yeah.
would be nice, and it was nice, but that, I never went up in that tower, but Jack used to.
mhm. Yeah, Jack.
He still does. He
Yeah.
still,
And
yeah.
he rings the bell, didn't he ring it on
Yes, he did.
2011?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
He
nine
went over
he,
to it.
Yeah,
I think somebody else did it this year.
did they?
I think it was
Oh,
someone
I
other
thought-
than
Well,
Jack.
he mentioned
yeah.
it. I thought he was.
All right,
going
well,
to
maybe it
do
was him then, but yeah, but
Yeah.
so that's how it
Somebody else
started,
might
huh?
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always did that.
Oh, wasn't that interesting?
Yeah.
He was such a good trustee,
Oh
wasn't
my
he?
gosh,
He
he
was
would
just,
do,
he was wonderful.
he did everything.
And now he does all kinds of things at the center. Very
He just
helpful
likes
person. Yeah.
And he's very organized.
Mm.
I mean, he does.
Well, he
Right, with the
reorganized the
books.
whole
He was with the
basement.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the one that put all the shelving
all the
in
shelves in,
and kept
got
things.
all the boxes.
And he used to have boxes that he got bottled water in,
Mhm.
so the boxes were all the same. He
All
was
the
really,
same.
he tried to keep
Yeah.
things very neat.
Yeah.
Couldn't always do that, but I
No.
mean, what a difference it made down there.
It did, made it easier to
Huge.
handle the boxes and
Mm.
because.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
that
terrific
was-
help.
Yeah. So I don't know about the library,
Yeah.
how it's gonna evolve, but it's interesting.
Yeah, with the expansion,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if and when it happens, yeah, yeah.
You know, the house that the library purchased,
Mm-hmm.
when I was growing up, was on the other side of that.
Oh,
And,
okay, I've got, yep.
The McCall family lived there. I think there's 5 apartments where I used to live. It used to be just 2, and then eventually 3, but it's 5 over there now. But the McCalls lived there, the 3 McCall sisters. They were single ladies, and one, Mary, Estelle, and Catherine. One was a nurse, one was a teacher, and one was the homemaker. And then my parents eventually sold after my sister and I were married, and my parents moved down from Church Street to Grove Street, which was also a McCall house, where the 2 aunts of those ladies used to live. And they were well in their 90s at that point, and they had like a single bulb hanging in the rooms and so forth. And when my parents bought that, and they were going to fix it up and so forth, my mother got really sick, so they didn't get a chance to do a lot there. But that was a neat house.
Oh, it's so
It's a
cute.
lovely
Yeah.
house, and
Yeah.
a young family bought it and
Mhm.
done some nice things with it. That was a lovely house,
Mhm.
old, very old, needed a lot of
Mhm.
care. But that's where we moved, Church Street there. I never lived on Grove Street, because by that time I had moved to Woodville.
And you're on Pleasant?
I am. So how many years altogether have you lived in the town? You know, that's one thing that I'm supposed to ask.
Since she was 5 months old?
Yes, 77 years.
Wow, that's terrific.
Mhm.
And Doris, you came,
I came in
left,
48.
and then came back.
Yeah, I only left for maybe a year and then I came back. So 48, yeah, and I'm 79 this year.
Are you 79? Yeah.
And I'm climbing right behind it.
You're never gonna catch up.
All right.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful town to live in. I just, never having lived anywhere else, you say, I can't compare it, but I just always loved living here. I feel happy, I feel safe, I love...
Still.
Still,
Yeah.
I still love it. I mean, there's so many parts of town that I don't really even know. Sometimes I take
Oh,
her,
I do.
when my sister was visiting, I took her around to some places and I was totally lost. I
With
didn't
the
know
new-
how I
the
was
new-
even going to
the
get
new
around it.
developments, is that what you're referring
Yeah,
to?
you know, I started in Saddle Hill and came out on Cedar Street Extension, and I don't know how I got there. I went all around.
Yeah,
You know, it's just
Yeah.
amazing. And
yeah.
huge, I mean, just such huge, spectacular homes that you look at and you think, this is Hopkinton.
Yeah, and that happened in a very short
Yes,
period of time.
it
That
did.
was,
It
I mean,
did.
that was happening when I came here
Yeah.
Yeah, when did you come, Linda?
in 1995, which is
Okay,
18 years.
Yeah.
But it was beginning, or it was pretty much along the way, but it's, yeah, very rapid change. Have you driven through Legacy Farms?
Yes, I did.
Yes, it's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You just,
That's a whole nother recording, but yeah.
I know.
Yeah, so I would think
Mm.
that there are big changes.
There are
There
gonna be
are
a
on
lot
the
of
way.
problems and a lot of,
Yeah, well, everything,
Adjusting.
it comes with it, a lot of problems, you know, progress just does. There's a lot of good, but there's
yeah,
the other side too.
right. I know.
And the fact that you don't know most of the people in town,
No.
it seems. I used to feel like I knew just about everybody in
Sure.
town.
You mean now you don't know most of the
Now
people?
there are so many people who live here. You don't even see them. They don't take part in town things.
Yeah.
They're not at town meetings. They probably don't. Some probably do use the library, but so many of them are professional people that live on.
Yeah, it's
they work
become
in the
a
cities.
bedroom, this is a
They
bedroom
work in the
community
cities,
now.
and,
Yeah,
and they just come here to live, but they
Right.
don't
Yeah.
participate in the town things.
yeah.
So you don't get to know them,
No.
and they're probably really nice people.
Mhm.
You just don't know them.
But it's nice, still nice to see some of the old timers that you do know.
Yes.
And,
Well, and you must have met some new people. I mean, you know me.
Oh,
you
yes,
have met
yes.
some new
Yes.
people.
Oh, you
right?
do. You
You
do.
do.
You know, I just mean sort of the newer ones who live in some of the outskirts that you, you know, sometimes driving around, I wish they were standing in front of their house and I probably say, oh,
It's
yeah,
different,
I
yeah.
know her, but I just didn't know she lived there or whatever.
Well, usually I do a lot of walking and bike riding, and you don't in some of those kinds of communities. You never see anyone.
No.
They're not home.
No,
I don't
I
know
know
where
it.
they
That's-
are, but they're
right.
not home.
Right.
Yeah, it's different. It is
well, they built Sanctuary, the condos up here. And,
different. Off of Chamberlain. Yeah.
right down here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that walk. And I think they all the new ones that I don't recognize and know, come from Sanctuary.
Really?
Because they've got their dogs.
Sure.
And they're walking around, and I was thinking, oh, I wish I knew who they were,
Mm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and chat with them.
And it used to be that you knew everybody.
Yeah, you would,
just-
you would know, yeah.
I know.
Well, it was when, I didn't grow up in Hopkinton, but it was like that when I grew up. And when I moved here, I thought I would know all my neighbors,
Yeah.
and I don't, and I
No.
didn't. And I thought I was moving into
Yeah.
a neighborhood, but it's something to do with the times too.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's
And where did you
not
live
there.
previously?
I lived in Auburndale, which is
Oh,
part
city.
of Newton. But
Yeah.
well, no, that's a little village. It's a part of Newton. So, but
Yeah.
life was like
So
that
it
there
was-
too.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
from what I hear of you here.
Yeah.
And the Hopkinton of 1995 was not like that.
No.
It's just
No.
yeah.
No.
Different times. I have to. I think unless you have something more, I think I have to
Yeah.
sign off from the
No.
interview. Did you want to say something, Doris?
I'm just saying.
We
what
could do
time
another
is it?
one another time.
Just rambling.
How are you doing with your,
Well, let me conclude this. So
Oh,
this
all
was
right. Get on your
we're
tape.
concluding the interview now at this point in time with Carol Walsh on my right and Doris Kumlin on my left. It's September 30th, 2013. So we're going to shut this off.